We're here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings and FanDuel. This time for tonight's two-game slate. That's right, two games randomly in Week 15 on Monday Night Football. We have the Chicago Bears and the Minnesota Vikings. We have the Atlanta Falcons and the Las Vegas Raiders. Welcome. I am Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, single game $1 million winner. Now, unfortunately, Jack could not join us. Other duties to attend to. Who typically joins me here on these two-game slates and these short slates. He built our lineup builder and notoriously crushes these shorter slates. But don't worry, had a conversation with him this morning. He sends his regards and good luck, and he gave me a couple tips on what he's looking at for tonight's slate, so I'll be sure to pass that along. What we'll do in this video, I will talk about the injuries that impact all four teams on tonight's slate. We will then talk about some underperformers, a couple of receivers, one running back in particular that will be looking to get overweight on the field in our tournament lineups. And then we'll talk about the three primary strategies for short slates, two gamers on DraftKings and FanDuel, what we typically do and which strategies will work best for tonight. And then we'll close out the show with some Showdown specific thoughts. Now, 100K to first on both Showdown slates on DraftKings, some decent sized contests for both games on FanDuel as well. So we will not neglect the Showdown aspect of these two games. Don't worry, just stick around to the end for that. Now, I have to be out of here by 5:35, 5:40 because our NBA team is coming up right behind me at 5:45 p.m. Eastern to break down tonight's NBA DFS slate. So if you play NBA DFS, make sure you stick around for that here on the channel. So we got Christy in the chat. What's up, Christy? Appreciate you joining in. Rare Finch, maybe Ray Finch. I think it's Rare Finch. Let me know. It says you have helped me a lot. Thanks. Well, appreciate that. Appreciate the kind words. Let's keep it rolling tonight. This is a live show, so if you guys have questions, throw them in the chat, and I will answer them along the way. So let's start with these injuries for tonight. And again, we'll start with this first game, Chicago and Minnesota. That game is at 8, not 8:15 p.m. Eastern. So for you folks out there who like to upload your CSVs 1 minute before lock, or for a certain family member of mine who likes to get their bets in 1 minute before the game starts, 8 o'clock tonight, not 8:15. So make sure you set your watches appropriately. All right, so 8 p.m., Chicago and Minnesota. We look at the injuries that impact this game. DeAndre Swift for Chicago is questionable. Did not practice, got in a limited practice on Saturday. However, he spoke to reporters after practice, said he's totally fine, he's going to play, no big deal. We look at last week, kind of a similar setup where he was dealing with an injury, and it's that time of year where running backs especially are just monitoring their workloads in practice. He played 42 snaps. Roschon Johnson missed last week. He is still out this week. So we'll have Travis Homer as the running back 2 in Chicago, and he saw 7 snaps last week. So pretty big snap share for DeAndre Swift last week, and we expect that again tonight here against the Vikings. Probably the most impactful injury for Chicago is their left tackle, Braxton Jones. He is out, so Caleb Williams already takes a ton of sacks. This will not help the matters whatsoever. And then their defensive tackle, Gravon Dexter, top 50 rusher, top 50 run stuffer, according to PFF's metrics. He's out for tonight. So not great for Chicago's chances in this game, but they're going to be throwing a lot and still lots of fantasy options to be had. On Minnesota side, Stephon Gilmore, their corner, he is out. Well, he's questionable. I lean out. He got in one limited practice with a hamstring injury on Saturday. Generally, we need at least one full practice or multiple limited practice for a hamstring injury. But they were without him last week, and they did just fine, so we expect similar tonight. If anything, it cancels out some of the injuries on Chicago's side. Steven, Trey, Cheesy, Kyle, Kiss Good, Andrew in the chat. What's up, guys? All right, I see some questions. I will get to them here in a second after we get through the injuries. In the second game, now this game is at 8:30. Unfortunately, if you want to make some ownership adjustments between 8 and 8:30, that could help some late swaps, but that's really about it. Not enough time to get enough information on who is playing well and who is not in the first 30 minutes of the game, unless we have a catastrophic injury. Fingers crossed we don't. So late swap won't be too big of a factor for tonight's game, for tonight's two-gamer. On Atlanta's visiting side, their middle linebacker, Troy Anderson, is out. So maybe we bump their running backs and the tight ends for Vegas a little bit with him out of the lineup. Vegas continues to deal with injuries. Most impactful, Max Crosby, their star edge rusher, came back last week. He's out for the rest of the year, going to get season-ending surgery. That's obviously a bump to Atlanta's offense. Aiden O'Connell, their starting quarterback, did not practice all week. Somehow was still listed as questionable. Adam Schefter reported this morning that they're going to test him out pregame, but Desmond Ridder is in line to start tonight. So we will move forward with the assumption that Desmond Ridder is the starting quarterback for The Raiders, now a little bit of a revenge game here. Remember, the Falcons drafted Desmond Ridder, started a few games for them, more than a few games. And he'll get his chance tonight. He's had a couple of relief appearances for the Raiders, 3 to be exact, since he came over. And he's decent, right? He's not this like completely inept backup. He can run a little bit, can throw some. So one of the better backup quarterbacks in terms of at least having a chance to provide fantasy production for himself, but also his teammates. So we don't have to fully downgrade Brock Bowers or Jacoby Myers or some of these other guys on the Raiders offense because Ridder is at least somewhat capable and can't be a huge downgrade over Aiden O'Connell. Alexander Madison is back in the backfield for the Raiders. However, head coach Antonio Pierce said Sincere McCormick, who has come on really strong the last couple of games, he's earned the starting role. So Sincere McCormick is going to be the lead back tonight. He played 61% of the snaps last week. That's probably a pretty good number. Amir Abdullah is going to mix in on passing downs. Alexander Madison will spell him some. But it's going to be Sincere McCormick leading the show, and good for him. What a story. And again, helped me win preseason money, so I love to see him succeed during the regular season as well. All right, let's see some of these questions, and then we'll talk about our underperformers for tonight's game. Let's see what we got here. Again, if you guys have questions, throw them in the chat. I will answer them. So Trey in the cut says, would it be smart to play Desmond Ridder? So that's a great question. Our model is extremely high on Desmond Ridder tonight. I'll bring it up really quickly. This is our Occupy model. OccupyFantasy.com ranks every player, FanDuel, and DraftKings with our projected ownership that Jack and I put together by hand for every slate. And the biggest benefit of playing Desmond Ridder tonight is that projected ownership. As you see here, let me make sure you guys can see this. But on DraftKings, we have 12% projected ownership, 9% on FanDuel. Yeah, you guys can see that. And our model likes him. Our model ranks him as the #1 salary-adjusted quarterback for tonight. So it allows you to fit in some more studs at just $4,800 on DraftKings, $6,800 on FanDuel. And again, doesn't need to do a ton at that price tag. And as we all know, the Tommy DeVito rule. On short slates, if a quarterback has a pulse, we're playing them if we're playing multiple lineups. Ridder has a pulse. And this isn't like a slate with cheat code quarterbacks, right? It's not like we have Josh Allen or Burrow or some of these other guys that are really tough to beat. It would not be shocking if any of these 4 quarterbacks ended up as the top scorer for tonight. So we'll take the ownership discount. We'll take the salary discount with Desmond Ridder. I think is a fantastic tournament play. Cheesy says, is there a chance Royce Freeman makes the active roster for Chicago? That's a great question. I haven't seen roster elevations from the practice squad were due by 5 p.m. Eastern. If anyone has seen that, let us know in the chat. I honestly have not seen any practice squad elevations today. I missed it in the last hour or so. If you see something, let me know in the chat. Kick says Homer seems like good value, right? So yeah, again, only played 7 snaps last week, but has a ton of contingent upside if the game gets out of hand, or Swift re-aggravates his injury, or they just simply play Homer a little bit more. So he's going to be, what, 1% owned? Let's check our running back rankings here. And we have Travis Homer, 0% on DraftKings, 1% on FanDuel. He might get a couple percent higher on either site. But yeah, no one's going to play him. And probably a large field tournament play only, though. Matt in the chat, longtime subscriber. Matt says, good slate to play after Sunday. I agree with you, Matt. Yes, I definitely agree. Zach says he's going to the Vikings game tonight. Have fun, Zach. Root on whoever we have in our lineups for us, live and in person. Jake says mega stacking. Yes, we will get to that here in a second. Thanks for the foreshadowing there, Jake. Lots of Ridder supporters in the chat. Although Randy Scores making his monthly mandated court appearance in the chat. It says sign him up for the Ridder pain. If it's good enough for Randy Scores, longtime subscriber, it's good enough for me as well. All right, let's go back to DraftKings here. And let's talk about our underperformers. We have 3 on the slate, 2 official, 1 unofficial. The 2 official ones are on our underperforming wide receiver list. We had some hits yesterday, had some misses as well. That's to be expected with players on this list. However, the hits are really high. Look at Brian Thomas Jr. yesterday. A massive game, was integral in winning tournaments of all sizes. And let's hope that one of these 2 on tonight's slate pop off, and they are integral in winning tournaments tonight because we will be playing them heavily. One is Drake London for the Atlanta Falcons. He was on the list last week. Didn't necessarily disappoint. We look at his game log last week, 12 points. Didn't kill your lineup at all. We look at his expected fantasy points over the last 3 games. Expected to have scored 41. And again, this is looking at targets, how many, how deep down the field they are, and where they come on the field. A target on the 1-yard line is much more valuable than a target, say, on the 50-yard line. So looking at where his targets have happened, how deep, how many, He's been expected to score around 41 fantasy points. He's only scored 30. What are some reasons for this happening? Drops, inaccurate throws, really unlucky in getting tackled near the goal line, whatever it may be. Sometimes it's the fault of the receiver. Sometimes it's the fault of the quarterback. Sometimes it's just pure unluckiness. Probably all three for Drake London, but we know he's in a good offensive system. He's a talented player. It's not some scrub underperformer. So these are the guys we really like to hammer. So we'll be playing Drake London heavily tonight. Typically, for those who are unaware, when you play underperforming wide receivers, the idea is they really capitalize on a big way in terms of regression to the mean, missing some deep balls, missing some touchdowns in recent weeks. Generally, you see a spike game happen in the very near future. So that's why we're playing these guys, despite their underperformance in recent weeks. Next up, we have Jacoby Myers. And he just barely makes the list. He's only underperformed by about 4 fantasy points in our formula. But the biggest thing is he's expected to have scored 55 fantasy points, which is a really large number over a 3-game sample. Jacoby Myers. We look 13, 15, 25. That's a great stretch, but his usage indicates he probably should have scored a little more than that. And again, we look at 0 touchdowns on 36 targets in the last 3 games. That's insane. So Jacoby Myers, underperforming wide receiver. And when we have guys that are expected to score a lot of fantasy points, like Myers has been, the threshold for underperforming can get smaller and smaller in terms of making our underperforming wide receiver list. Jacoby Myers is in that mix as well. So if you're signing up for the Desmond Ridder pain, as they said in the chat, Jacoby Myers is an excellent and logical stacking partner with him. Next, we have a running back. And again, this is unofficial. We don't track running backs because they don't necessarily always perform and revert to the mean like receivers do. But when we play on showdown slates, we play on short slates, we're willing to take a chance that the regression is coming just because of the benefit we get on such a short slate. And that running back is for the Minnesota Vikings, and it's Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones, expected, and again, this is according to ESPN's metrics, which is public, which is why I use these numbers, expected to have scored 209 fantasy points this year. Has only scored 187. Now, there is some concern. His snaps have dropped a little bit in recent weeks. Maybe that's just saving him for the long haul here, as they are a contender in the NFC. Maybe it's an injury. We don't know. Either way, his snaps have dropped a little bit. Maybe they just like giving Cam Akers the ball some. Either way, here's an insane stat for you on Aaron Jones. And this shows why he's underperforming in a single stat. He's had double-digit carries on the 1-yard line this year. Not inside the fight. Literally on the 1-yard line, he's had double-digit carries. He has scored 1 touchdown. 1 touchdown on double-digit carries from the 1-yard line and has negative rushing yards from the 1-yard line. Aaron Jones is a good running back. He's a talented running back. It's a good offense. That is an insane stat. That will regress to the mean. And ideally, that happens on a slate like tonight where we play him heavily and we end up with multiple touchdowns on the goal line. I remember I played him heavily last week in hopes that this stat would regress. He got a carry on the 1-yard line and he immediately fumbled. And I was like, well, he's just continuing with the most unlucky 1-yard line streak of all time. So Aaron Jones, let's see if he can get a little bit of regression tonight in his favor. The one thing is, obviously, we're not getting any really ownership discounts on these guys on a 2-game slate, but it does mean you can play them heavily if you're making multiple lineups or playing a single entry lineup. All right. Let's get on to the short slate strategies for tonight. Remember, there are 3 to 4 keystones, pillars of building short slate lineups. It's leaving salary on the table. It is playing low-owned plays, and or it is mega stacking, as someone in the chat pointed out, Jake, I believe. Let's get to the merits of each of these strategies. Let's catch up on the questions in the chat, and then we will come back to these strategies. Let's see. All right, Nodum says Bears elevated Darrington Evans, so he'll be the running back 3 tonight, not Royce Freeman, it sounds like. So thank you, Nodum, for that. Appreciate that. Kicks Good says lean on Allen or Moore having the bigger game. I guess DJ Moore. I need Keenan Allen Moore for my best ball playoff teams, so I will fingers crossed and just hope that it's Keenan Allen. I don't have a good answer for you there. Well, you know what? Let's just check the model. I'll tell you what our model thinks. On DraftKings, our model believes it's DJ Moore. On FanDuel, it also believes it's DJ Moore. So if you're a fan of the model, which we are, DJ Moore is the answer there. All right, let's see. Matt says, think in small field or micro field. It's a good idea to just play Bijan to block like in double ups and get different elsewhere. Yeah, I think so. So the reason that question is being asked, if you haven't taken a look at ownership tonight, is we have Bijan at 69% projected ownership on DraftKings, 62% on FanDuel. There is a decent chance that it comes in even higher. In smaller contests, I would not be shocked if this is 80% or more. Yeah, just play him. There are enough low owned plays. There are enough salary savers to where his price isn't that prohibitive. Where fading and getting a different lineup construction would be worth fading. I agree. I think smaller contests, really small contests, 10, 20 players, or even up to 100 players. Once you get over 100, then we can start talking. But yeah, I agree, Matt. I think Bijan just play him there and get different elsewhere. Nodum says, yeah, a couple weeks ago, Jones fumbled twice and they pulled him for a bit. So yeah, that could be the reason for the snap decrease as well. Last week was a blowout. So yeah, at least some plausible explanations for why his snaps have dropped in the last couple of games. Peter says, can you build a DraftKings lineup for larger GPP for us? Yeah, I'll go through some builds here as I go through these strategies here in the next segment. Jake says he needs Jones and Myers to do good to win best ball. So you're saying there's a chance. Well, our underperforming metrics would say there is a chance, so fingers crossed. Hope you can advance. Ed in the chat, what's up, man? If you could choose one, are you playing the 2-gamer or the Showdowns? I personally, and this goes to show in what type of player you are and looking at your results, I personally have more success in playing Showdowns than I do on short slates like this. Jack just has success in both, so that's why he plays both. But if you're the type of person that Showdown, you can't get a hang of it, or you're really good at 2-gamers, that should dictate your strategy. I really like the Showdowns tonight, but I think there's some excellent angles on the 2-gamer. So I think if you don't have a preference or your results don't say one way or the other, or you don't have enough data to decide if you want to play Showdown or 2-game, I would play 2-game because I do think there are some good angles tonight on there. All right. Justin said, how is Caleb's ownership? And this may shock you, or maybe not. I don't know. We have him as projected as the highest owned quarterback on DraftKings, just $5,700. Number 2 on FanDuel at 30%. So despite the offensive line issues, despite the sacks, Caleb going to be popular. The number 1 or number 2 most popular quarterback of the 4 tonight. All right, let's head back to DraftKings and let's talk about these strategies for your 2-game lineups. Who else we got in the chat? Rod, Byron. Rod's asking for anytime touchdown. Got to bet the underperformers. Drake London, Jacoby Myers. Parlay them together if you're feeling frisky. All right, so let's talk about the 3 strategies: leaving salary, low owned plays, and mega stacking. So leaving salary, I ran our builder tonight, and generally what I like to do on these short slates is I don't get too restrictive or put in very many rules. I open up the stacking. I don't put in any ownership requirements. I put most of the guys that are relevant players into my player pool and run the builder and see what the top lineups are spitting out. And some of the top lineups, not at the very top and not all of them, but there are a decent chunk that left $1,000 to $2,000 left over in salary. And it's very possible because, one, we have no cheat code quarterbacks. As I said, no Josh Allen, no Burrows, no guys like that. No Lamar Jackson. So any of these 4 can win. And if Desmond Ridder is just flat out the top quarterback in terms of scoring, which again is possible, is it likely? Not necessarily, but it's possible. He's $1,800 cheaper than Darnold. So by that logic, if you think Ridder can be the highest scorer, you can leave up to $1,800 at least in Ridder lineups. The same goes for running backs and receivers, right? You're probably not going to play Cam Akers and leave $3,000 or leave $4,000 on the table because you could get up to Bijan Robinson, and the chances of him outscoring Bijan is 1% maybe. So that's a good way to test out how much salary to leave on the table. A vast majority of my top lineups ended up in that, I don't know, $300 to $900 range, but a decent chunk, I would say, a nominal chunk ended up $1,000 to $2,000 left over. So if you don't like the low owned plays tonight, or you're not feeling the mega stacking, leaving salary on the table is another great way to get different. That's more of a larger field idea than a smaller field idea. Think you're playing the 500K to first, it's probably a better idea there than playing a 100 player league. So just something to keep in mind. Next, low owned plays. The builder organically, without putting any ownership restrictions into the builder, it organically gave me at least one or two low-owned guys, and low-owned meaning under 20% projected ownership, into my lineups. And I'm talking running backs, receivers, tight ends, and even some Desmond Ritter as well. And in fact, I really love Desmond Ritter, as we keep talking about here. So you don't have to necessarily force low-owned plays. If you use our builder, our lineup builder, at Acrobat Fantasy or whatever our other optimizers, a good chance you'll end up with some automatic low-owned plays in your lineup. So that's another differentiator. Let's talk about the low-owned plays at each position just so you know who they are and you can be aware of them when you're building your lineups. And I'll go position by position here. First one at quarterback is just Desmond Ritter. The other three will be over 20% ownership more than likely. At running back, and right now I have it sorted by DraftKings projected ownership. At running back, we have Tyler Algier, who's known to steal some touchdowns and touches from Bijan Robinson, as any Bijan Robinson fantasy manager can attest to. So Tyler Algier, just 5% on both sides. He's certainly in play in high-risk contests. Cam Akers, we talked about. Travis Homer, these are guys that you're probably only playing in large field GPPs if you're building 20-plus lineups. But again, they'll see enough of the field that they can sneak into the optimal lineup if they somehow get lucky and get a touchdown or a couple of catches or break a long run. At receiver, here we go. On DraftKings, we have Rome Odunze. On FanDuel, we have Ray McCloud, and this goes to show how pricing the scoring system can impact if a player is high-owned or low-owned. And then on both sites, we have Trey Tucker. Trey Tucker's got some speed. Obviously, we saw him with the touchdown against Kansas City on that Showdown slate on the Black Friday. So Trey Tucker, certainly an option. And then Odunze on DraftKings, Ray McCloud on FanDuel. And then any player that's not listed here, any wide receiver 4 or lower, wide receiver 3 on some of these teams will also be 1%. At tight end, and I think someone in the chat said it actually, but at tight end we have Cole Kmet, 15% on DraftKings. He'll be relatively popular on FanDuel. But let's not forget Michael Mayer, who was their rookie last year that they drafted. And everyone said, oh, why did you draft Brock Bowers? You have Michael Mayer. Well, we see why, how good Brock Bowers has been. But Michael Mayer, 81% of the snaps last week. DJ Turner got hurt, their wide receiver 3. As a result, they ran a bunch of 2 tight end sets. They'll probably do it again tonight. Michael Mayer, no one's really going to play him. Excellent showdown option as well. But Michael Mayer, if he's going to play 50% plus of the snaps, great. If he plays up to 80% like he did last week, that could be your 2-3% owned tight end. We know tight end is volatile anyways. He could be play your best lineup and play Michael Mayer at tight end. That could be a good option. So Michael Mayer, again, played heavily last week as a talented guy, and we get him at 1-3% ownership. All right, let's talk about mega stacking. Let's see anything else in the chat, though, really quickly. JPT says, is Johnny Munt in play? I don't think so. I had Josh Oliver higher ranked in the model. Is Johnny Munt even playing tonight? I know this is a very deep cut. Someone let me know if they can check the injury report or the roster. For some reason, in my mind, I had Johnny Munt not playing tonight. That could be very wrong. Let me know in the chat if you guys have an answer on that, because that is a super deep cut from JPT there. Yeah, and we get, please tell me if I pronounce your name incorrectly or correctly. And Chewy says Caleb Williams with backup LT, limited threat from the run game with a banged up running back room, bad chalk in my opinion. I think it's very well possible. He can run. They're going to throw a ton, so he can always get there. But I agree, it could be a very bad outing for Caleb Williams if they can't protect him and that game gets out of hand. So I think it's possible. I think that's well within the range of outcomes. And Byron says he likes Algier with Bijan to try to get different, and that is that's the Lions strategy we've talked about on previous 2-game videos, right? You play both running backs from the same backfield, get all the touchdowns there. No one really does that because people want to play one or the other, but not both. I think that's a really good strategy to get different. Got it. And he goes by Chewy. Shout out Chewy. Appreciate the comment, and good luck tonight. And Notem, as always, coming through in the clutch, says Munt played 17% of the snaps last week, should be playing. So, yeah, I guess if you want to play Munt, more of a showdown play than anything JPT, but I appreciate you, Notem, for checking that for me. Thank you. All right, now let's talk about mega stacking. Let's go to DraftKings. And so mega stacking, I'm going to bring up our daily plug, OccupyFantasy.com. Our writer Bismo, as always, does a fantastic job on these showdown, these short slate plugs. Let me show you what he says, right? So generally, this is what you want to do on these types of slates. And tonight he says playing 4-1, 4-2, or even 5-1, 5-2 stacks on DraftKings, as outlined in our strategy guide. Again, if you guys haven't checked it out, that's free to do so. The field's going to play Minnesota stacks and Atlanta stacks for the most part. They'll play some Caleb Williams as well. But mega stacking, we're playing at least 4 guys from the same team, including their quarterback. We're playing 1 or 2, maybe 3 guys from the opposing team, with the idea being that the scoring is spread out and the scoring is concentrated in the other game. Or this game scores so many more fantasy points than the other game that we end up with all the guys in one lineup. The field doesn't do this as often as they should, is generally why we like to do this. Jack has talked about it in every short slate video. So we're going to continue to do it tonight. Now, the lineup builder, again, I wasn't forcing anything just to see what it would do. It wasn't organically giving me any big mega stacks in the top lineups on DraftKings. It did on FanDuel a little bit. So I don't think the field will do it as much tonight. So it's a really good option. So we can do something like, let me just show you really quickly what a mega stack would look like. Let's say we like Desmond Ridder. Right? Let's play a Desmond Ridder mega stack. It would look something like this. We play Desmond Ridder. We play the starting running back Sincere McCormick. We play his top receiver, Jacoby Myers. And we play his top tight end, Brock Bowers. Now, if this is happening, Atlanta's probably keeping up to some capacity. We play Bijan. We play our underperforming wide receiver, Drake London. Now we have 4,600 left per player. And we could play a defense from the other game. We could play the Bears. We could play, I don't know, DJ Moore. That leaves us 5,700. We could play Swift, Mooney, whatever, right? We could play Mooney for a 4-3 stack. We could play Keenan Allen for stacks from the other game. Lots of ways to go about it, but that's what a mega stack is. 4 or 5 guys from one team. You're probably not playing 5 with Ridder, unless you're really crazy. Generally, you're playing 5 with Caleb, 5 with Kirk Cousins, and probably 5 with Sam Darnold as well. So again, I think it's a really good idea tonight. It's really tons of leverage in playing it. But again, if you're trying to build this way and you're not really feeling it, again, leaving salary or playing the low-owned plays are viable options as well. You don't necessarily have to go this route. We just know that historically this is the way to build for these 2-game slates. One old school says, is Jefferson too pricey? He's extremely expensive, and he's not going to be high-owned as a result. In fact, his teammate Jordan Addison will probably be more popular than he is. So we get Jetta at relatively low ownership on a 2-gamer. I think that's something you have to take a shot at. That's my opinion. So Jefferson, yes, will be low and tough to get to, especially on the Showdown slate. We look at the Showdown slate. Jefferson is 12K, 18K at captain. He's really tough to get to on Showdown. And the optimal approach is playing these lower price captains or mid-range captains. As a result, we'll see, Jefferson not eclipse 20% captain ownership, which may be wrong. I understand why, but he's a good high-risk captain in Showdown as a result. Randy says, Ridder double tight end too deep of a cut. Probably not. I could see that. Double tight ends in play on a 2-game slate. We play something like, let me see here. We play Ridder. We play Bowers. Michael Meyer. Jacoby Myers. 59.80, we play Bijan. We still got plenty of salary left. We could probably upgrade a little bit because of that. I think it's in play. That's a good call. Samuel says that he missed the best section of the stream, water sips. It is a 30-minute live stream. We're going to be 35 minutes. I've been sipping water nonstop, bro. You haven't missed it. I'm going to continue to sip. And for calling it out, I'll answer your question. Is leaving over 1,000 not enough? You don't have to. Again, if you play low-owned players or you mega stack, you don't have to leave any salary. If you don't do either of those, you can leave 500 or more. We said you can leave up to 2,000 tonight and feel comfortable with it. Again, not something you're targeting or trying to do, but if you're building a bunch of lineups, you can have some lineups that are in that range. Yeah, Kyle says, I wonder if the Bears are going to sell out just to stop Justin Jefferson again. Possible. We never know what these teams' game plans are going to be. If that's the case, Addison's just going to score 3 touchdowns again. Yeah, that makes it tough. It's tough to know. But again, I like playing the most talented players on 2-gamers at lowered ownership. So I'll be playing more Justin Jefferson in the field and just be utterly shocked when when Addison outscores him, or Jalen Naylor for that matter. All right, guys, let's get some final questions here. The NBA show starts in 15 minutes here on the channel, so I got to get out of here by 5:35. Stick around if you like NBA DFS. But let's talk about Showdown just really quickly. Let's see here. Chicago, Minnesota. Remember, this game starts at 8 flat. It is, like I just said, it's hard to get to the expensive captains in smaller field. Small field, a lot of the guys that were popping for me, TJ Hawkinson at this middle tier price tag of 8,700 at the captain. Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, these Bears receivers in that lower elite range. Let's see what Bismo says in the daily plug about this. Yeah, his streamlined advice for this slate is that the field's going to build relatively even, despite everything we know about the Bears, because of their plethora of options, especially at receiver, that the field's going to build kind of balanced. So if you think Minnesota destroys this game, build 4-2 stacks, 5-1 stacks in favor of Minnesota, or play some of the lower owned captains we talked about. That could be differentiators for that game in Showdown. Now, for the Atlanta game, let's pull this up. The field is playing Bijan Robin extremely heavily. On DraftKings, we have his projected captain ownership at 30%, and it might even soar north of that. This is a perfect storm for us, right? Because we get 2 underperforming wide receivers, and we have someone that's going to be 30% plus captain and is not an underperformer. So we could play Jacoby Myers. We could play Drake London heavily in our high-risk lineups at captain and in the flex spots. And it's a very easy slate as a result. Let's see what Bismo says about it. He says, so yeah, the field is going to build very Atlanta heavy in this game. So if we build even, or we build Las Vegas heavy, or we play the lower owned captains not named Bijan, we have a good chance in high-risk contests for that Showdown slate. All right, final 4 minutes. Let's get in these questions. I will answer them, and then we'll get out of here. Yeah, I guess I didn't talk about defenses. Zach's question. Let's take a look at ownership tonight for defenses. Bears and Vikings accounting for 70%. Falcons and Raiders accounting for 30% on DraftKings. Just play with Falcons or Raiders. It is. I can't explain enough how much of a coin flip it is, a 4-sided coin. When you're playing a 2-game slate, it's crazy. Another way to get different, as we talked about, is playing a defense against your quarterback on a Showdown slate. So playing the Raiders against Kirk Cousins, playing the Falcons against Desmond Ridder, very easily can get there. And a great differentiator that a lot of lineups will not do. Let's see here. So I already built some lineups for the large slate, mega stacking. I talked about it for you guys. Who are you playing less of for the 2-game slate? That's a good question. Let's see. Let's go to running back here. I mean, Sincere McCormick, we got him at 55% plus ownership. For a guy who's not going to play third downs, really, for a guy who could lose some work to Alexander Madison, it feels like really bad ownership. Feels like really, really bad ownership. Love the story, love the guy. But if you're playing Sincere McCormick outside of a game stack, it feels really bad. So I think I'll have less of Sincere McCormick than the field goal because I'm going to be near the field on Bijan. I'm going to be way overweight on Aaron Jones. I'll probably be up on Swift as well. So McCormick's the guy that's going to get left out for me. At wide receiver, I will undoubtedly be underweight on Jordan Addison. I'm sure he'll score multiple touchdowns again, but I won't be playing him as heavily. I think those are 2 guys in particular that I'm looking to get underweight on. So Kyle says, any lineups with multiple players but no quarterback, for example, Jones, Addison, Hawkins, and Vikings D. I personally don't build that way. I know a lot of sims out there will push out lineups that look like that. And if you can build a story around that, if you can mix in some low-owned plays or leave some salary, you can build lineups like that. I personally have just been never successful at building lineups that look like that. But it is possible, and they do win on some of these slates. So if you like that, don't let me talking about this distract you from building in that specific way. Does Kyle Pitts have a pulse? I don't know, man. I don't know. I need him for best ball for some reason tonight. So I need him to have a pulse. But it's a 2-gamer. It's a 2-gamer. Let's see. Kyle Pitts, 34% on FanDuel, the most popular tight end. So, yes, he probably has a pulse tonight because he's popular. Is there a game I like to stack better than the other? It's probably Atlanta and Vegas just because we have the 2 underperformers, the lower-owned quarterbacks in that game. So I think Atlanta and Vegas is my preferred game stack. Let me see. Totals in this game. Yeah, totals are 44 for both. Ownership should be heavier in that Chicago game. So I'll say stack in the Atlanta game. Byron says, is it better to play the lowest owned quarterback in single entry? Not necessarily, right? Because playing Desmond Ridder is extremely risky. It just determines where you want to keep your risk. If you truly like Desmond Ritter, play him, right? But don't play him just because he is the lowest owned quarterback. If you like other low owned plays, if you like Trey Tucker or you like um, Tyler Algier or you like Rome Odunze on DraftKings, play those guys. You don't necessarily have to force the lowest owned quarterback. They don't. I don't know if they win more often or less often than they do in single entry, but it's not something you have to force them. Dwayne says, would you put Jefferson and Robinson in the same lineup? That's a great question, just because of their prices. So Jefferson, Robinson. What would a lineup like this look like? That leaves us 4,800 left per player. So obviously we could stack Desmond Ritter with this because he's 4,800, and that's a big reason why we would want to play someone like Ritter because it allows us to fit both Robinson and Jefferson. So I like that. But let's just say you're stacking the Chicago game, right? And you're stacking Caleb Williams. Let's get two of his receivers in. Let's get DJ Moore. Let's get Keenan Allen. Let's get maybe DeAndre Swift with him, right? Defense will play, I don't know, Falcons defense, tight end, Hawk, 3,700. What can we fit in there? Let's see. That's pretty rough. Tight end. Let's go with a 5-man stack. Cole Kmet, 4,700. That looks a little better if we play Ray McLeod, something like that. Yeah, so you can play it. I don't think it's the optimal way to play, but I would allow this type of lineup in my large field GPPs. I'm not sure it's the best way to build for small field GPPs, though. If we played 10 lineups, how much homer would you play? I would play 0 in 10 lineups, my opinion. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, or Dunze pick 2? Can't pick 2. They're all going to get targets. Tough to say. Model has it. Oops, that's running backs. Model has it. Moore, Keenan, Odunze in that order. All right, guys, 5:37. Got to get out of here so the NBA boys can take on the NBA slate for tonight. Stick around if you're playing NBA DFS in that slate tonight. We have a Saturday slate coming up, Christmas slate next Wednesday. We'll be doing videos or live streams here on the channel. Make sure you're subscribed. It's free to do so here on YouTube. You'll get notified when we go live, upload videos. Obviously, our writer Chris is doing the main slate videos as well. Does a great job with those. You'll get notified when those post for the remaining games here throughout the 2024-2025 season. Daily Plug's up. Occupy Model's up. Lineup Builder is up and running. We still got 3 hours left until the second game, so plenty of time to get your lineups in. Appreciate everyone tuning in. I know you have a lot of options to watch here on YouTube. Always appreciate you taking the time out to watch us here at Occupy Fantasy. And again, occupyfantasy.com is where you can get all the tools I've referenced that I use to build my lineups for these slates. Is that it? Yeah, and everyone's in the chat says hit the like button. Thanks, guys. All right, from Brian, from Occupy. Thank you for listening, and good luck and enjoy tonight's Monday Night Football slate.